Welcome, everyone. I am Penny Bernard Shaber, today's moderator for Aviation and Transit Report Card webinar. This webinar is based on the most recent 2024 report card for Wisconsin infrastructure. It's being offered as an ongoing partnership between the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin and the American Society of Civil Engineers, the Wisconsin section. The report cards were written by professional engineers who are members of the ASCE and are experts in each category. 17 categories of infrastructure are included in the complete report card, and between now and March 2025, we will present a total of 9 webinars covering all categories. It's important to ensure everyone that our physical infrastructures are reliably maintained and updated. This provides our communities with the means to prosper. We need assurance that airplanes and airports are safe and that transits can help get us to a variety of places. We need to know that we can trust that our water systems and waste management systems are safe. And as we make a transition to future powered by safe, reliable energy sources other than fossil fuels, we have to make sure that that is safe and cost effective. This requires both engineering know-how and savvy political advocacy. Those requirements bring together the American Society of Civil Engineers and the League of Women Voters. So why do these groups work together? As Marcia Guidart Murphy, president of American Society of Civil Engineers, has said, infrastructure isn't a Republican or a Democratic issue. We all use the same roads, bridges, broadband, and water systems. Our goal as civil engineers isn't partisan. It is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all. The League's mission is to educate voters so that we can advocate for good governmental policy through planning and legislation. We recognize that attention to the nuts and bolts of physical infrastructure is necessary to support our democracy's future. This will allow us to contact our elected representatives and ask them to support funding of well-functioning and well-maintained infrastructure. There are 17 categories of infrastructure we rely on every day. It includes many things such as aviation, transit, waterways, and a wider variety of things that we will cover in other webinars. We need all of this infrastructure to be safe and reliable. Today's webinar focuses on aviation and transit. Ryan Betker is the author of the Aviation Report Card. Ryan will give us a brief introduction to the report card grading process and will present the report card on aviation. Please remember to mute your computer and to put your questions in the chat. Each speaker will briefly identify and introduce themselves. Welcome, Ryan Betker.
Thank you, Penny. This year's the 2024 infrastructure report card covered 17 categories of infrastructure that were addressed. These included aviation, bridges, broadband, dams, drinking water, energy, hazardous waste, inland waterways, ports, public parks, rails, hazardous waste, schools, stormwater, and wastewater. For this report card, the criteria for these were covered over 8 different categories. They included capacity. Does each infrastructure's capacity meet the current and future demands? Condition. What is the infrastructure's existing and near future physical condition? Funding. What is the current level of funding from all levels of government and private industry for the infrastructure category as compared to the estimated funding needed? Future need. What is the cost to improve the infrastructure? Will the future funding prospects addressed be needed? Operation and maintenance. What is the owner's ability to operate and maintain the infrastructure properly? Is the infrastructure in compliance with government regulations? Public safety. To what extent is the public safety jeopardized by the condition of the infrastructure, and what could be the consequences of its failure? Resilience. What is the infrastructure system capability to prevent or protect against significant multi-hazard threats and incidents? How able is it to quickly recover and reconstitute critical services with minimal consequences for the public safety and health, the economy, and national security? And finally, innovation. What new and innovative techniques, materials, technologies, and delivery methods are being implemented to improve the infrastructure? From these categories, we were able to come up with a grade for each section that was evaluated. These range from an A down to an F. An A being exceptional, fit for future. The facilities are in excellent condition. They meet modern standards for functionality and are resilient. B, adequate for now. They're in good to excellent condition, safe and reliable with minimal capacity issues and minimal risk. C, mediocre, requires attention. Facilities are in fair to good condition. Some elements exhibit significant deficiencies in conditions and functionality with increased vulnerability to risk. D, which is poor, at risk. Facilities are in poor to fair condition. A large portion of the system exhibits significant deterioration. Condition and capacity are of significant concern with risk of failure. And finally, F, failing or critical. They're unfit for their purpose. Facilities are in unacceptable condition, widespread advanced signs of deterioration, with many of the components of the system exhibiting signs of imminent failure. For today, we'll be focusing on the aviation chapter in transit. Being the author of the aviation chapter, I am going first. This is, like I said, the joint with the League of Women Voters and ASCE. For Wisconsin, we gave the grade of a C+ for aviation. This is the same grade it received back in 2020. This criteria for Wisconsin was based on 6. We did not go through all 8, and we did combine public safety and resilience for this one. For capacity, we were looking whether the existing facilities met the needs and they're prepared for the future, just like everywhere else. Funding, do they have the sufficient needs to meet the needs of the airports? Not just looking at the terminals and the runways and everything that we think about for commercial, but also some of your private runways. How are they handling their funding? Condition, what's the condition of the facilities, terminals, runways, aprons, taxiways? Public safety and resilience. Do the facilities meet the requirements for the safety and public, and are they resilient against the weather and other disruptions of service? Future need, do they meet the needs of the airports? Not just the actual terminals and the airplanes, but also offsite. Do they have enough parking? Do they have the needs for getting people to and from the airports? And finally, innovation. What innovative ideas are airports utilizing at this time? Here's a map of all the 97 airports in Wisconsin. They're color-coded by their type, commercial, large, and medium, and small. There are 8 commercial airports. They are Rhinelander, Eau Claire, Mosinee or Central Wisconsin, La Crosse, Madison, Milwaukee, Appleton, and Green Bay. And these commercial airports allow 90% of Wisconsin population to be within 90 minutes of a commercial airport. That doesn't sound like a real big thing, but that's actually very valuable to Wisconsin. It allows us to be critical to support businesses, tourism, and ensure expedient emergency services. A lot of states do not have this availability within their state. For capacity, prior to the pandemic, each year our passenger enplanements were increasing, as you can see on the map here, 5.4 to 5.5. But then there was a sharp decrease during the pandemic. Since then, the numbers have slowly been increasing, and there was a big jump, and they've been coming back, but they're still not quite to the numbers of pre-pandemic. Okay, so we'll move on to capacity here. So like I was saying, prior to the pandemic, in 2018 and 2019, the enplanements were about 5.4 million to 5.5 million, steadily increasing. And that had been the case for all the years prior to that. There was a steep drop off in 2020 down to 2.1. And then it has slowly been increasing again. The numbers are getting closer to the pre-pandemic numbers, but they aren't there. This lag has allowed many airports the opportunity to access their capacity and to begin the process of expanding to be able to apply or to have ample capacity for the future. On the other side of the slide here, we're also showing commercial freight at airports. And this is something that has been going on for many years. And this is across the country. There has been a general decrease in the amount of freight that has been flown at commercial airports. And that offset with the employments has also helped capacity at the airports. Wisconsin has prioritized the importance of pavement condition, requiring long-term infrastructure, health, and pavement needs to be included in their airport's 6-year plans. This has allowed Wisconsin airports to prioritize funding to recondition and rehabilitate projects, resulting in the ability of airports to maintain the same condition with less funds. Although the condition of most of the commercial airports are close to or meeting the goals set by the state, which you can see on the slides here. The gold line are the state standards that they are trying to hit. We're close to them. Many of the general aviation airports are in poor condition with aspects including runway and taxiway lighting, visual aids, approach lighting, terminal facilities, stormwater management, and land use zoning. For aviation, there are a few sources of funding and financing, including revenues generated from airports, such as parking fees. There's general obligation bonds, federal, state, and local grants. And for commercial airlines, the passenger facilities charge, which is a fee that you pay to fly on commercial airlines through airports. Through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, has provided about $39 million in additional grants from 22 to 24, which has helped bridge the gap between available funds and infrastructure needs. But even with the current funding, there remains about approximately $600 million in deferred projects. Wisconsin airports are responsible for providing the traveling public with a safe environment in accordance with their federal regulations. That includes security, that was provided by TSA, aircraft rescue and firefighting, fencing to keep non-essential individuals out, de-icing to keep planes safe, mitigating wildlife hazard mitigation to prevent animal strikes. Then when we start talking about resiliency, this is an airport down in Tri-County, Wisconsin, down by Tri-County Airport down in southwest Wisconsin, which due to the topography of the area had severe flooding that regularly happened every spring. Through a recent project that we provided, we were able to work with the airport to prevent this from happening by digging a new ditch throughout their project to make their airport more resilient to handle things such as flooding in the spring, and ends up with a runway that is now able to be used all year round. Through the 2030 State Airport System Plan, they set system goals for various system attributes to evaluate and document each airport's performance. Through this report, they recommended approximately $700 million be spent over the next 20 years to bring airports up to expectations. Although this report is a valuable assessment, the value of the future need is far from a reality, as this just told us what we needed to do to bring it up to standards, not how to maintain our existing standards. A more recent all-encompassing number comes from the ACI state's infrastructure need that stated $1.7 billion was needed over the next 5 years. When it comes to innovation, Wisconsin is doing pretty good as well. Wisconsin has followed the FAA's plan to transition to the next gen space based off of navigation by investing into the system to be prepared when they go to implement it. They've been working on non-aeronautical economic generators to help with the funding, such as geothermal or to reduce heating costs, and solar fields like in microgrids, like the one shown in the bottom middle screen here. And finally, the use of unmanned aircraft systems has become very popular. To aid in aspects of all impacts of them on aviation, Wisconsin has created a website for users to become educated about the responsibilities and regulations pertaining to the use and operation of these drones. Finally, we look at recommendations to improve the grade. These are very similar to what came out in 2020, and they've done well to maintain the grade since 2020 because they have done a lot with increased construction costs, but they still have a ways to go to increase the grade. They need to find a way to increase state and federal funding so that the pavement and maintenance projects can be reliably scheduled. At the same time, they need to evaluate the cost sharing requirements for grants, as many of the smaller airports aren't able to pay the required portions of the grants to accept the grant. They need to continue to find new ways to improve the resiliency of the airports to be able to handle the more frequent flooding and snowstorms. Finally, Wisconsin has 2 great reports that they use to evaluate airports and explain the importance of them to the state in the Wisconsin State Airport System Plan and the economic significance of aviation. The issue is that these are very outdated and are in need of updates, and they need to commit from a state that they're going to update these on a regular basis so that they can explain to the public the importance of increasing funding to all of the projects in the state and the economy. Thank you. That would be the end of the slides.
Well, thank you, Ryan. We appreciate your input and your report on the report card. We really appreciate that. Thank you for doing that and for your information you provided. Our next speaker is Abe Weber, who is in the Appleton International Airport, and welcome, Abe.
Thanks, Penny. Can everybody hear me, see me, and see my screen? Want to just make sure before I kick started here.
Yes, it looks good.
All right, perfect. So thank you all for letting me join this presentation. I want to talk a little bit about Appleton International Airport and what we've seen happen at our airport over the past couple of years. I think it's been about 3 years since presented to this group. And then I'll hang around at the end and answer any questions at the end of the entire presentation if there are any questions. So I'll jump right in. We'll talk a little bit about Appleton Airport from a snapshot perspective, talk a little bit about our activity, some of our projects and planning that we have ongoing, and then certainly community engagement. But I always like to start out a conversation about Appleton Airport with our economic impact. And this is our economic impact that was conducted by the State Bureau of Aeronautics back in 2015, showing $676 million, 3,200 jobs, and about $150 million in personal income. And then below that graphic is all the projects and programs that we've installed since 2015, major investments by corporations like Gulfstream, Allegiant, American Airlines entering Appleton, and then the kickoff of our concourse expansion, which I'll go over in a little more depth. But why this is so important is I view our Appleton Airport really as an economic driver in our community, and really the reason Appleton Airport exists is to support our local community, and that's near and dear to our team's hearts. So I think it's very important for us to continue to work and drive at producing economic output for our community. Certainly talk a little bit about our development. If you look at this map, on the far right-hand side, you see kind of the airport terminal area, and then north of us is Gulfstream. We're working on some development there. In the center upper area, that large pink area is our Northwest Business Park. We have some projects ongoing there and some hangar additions going on there. And then off to the left, we call that our West Quadrant. I can point out with my cursor, if anybody can see my cursor in this area. That is previous or currently underdeveloped, and then kind of our what we expect to be developed in the next 10 to 15 years, or at least planning for development in the next area. And then on the bottom of the map, where my cursor is now, we call that our South General Aviation area. That's where we serve aircraft that are not commercial, so private aircraft, corporate aviation aircraft, We have a number of hangars there, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But just kick off with some of our commercial air service. This graph shows monthly passengers over the last 10 years. And you can see the growth has been quite significant, essentially doubling our passengers in 2016. And as we come into 2025, we're going to see about 100,000 passengers coming through the airport terminal every single month. Within that time, we've grown to the third busiest airport in Wisconsin, behind Milwaukee and Madison in both passengers, cargo, and operations. We're named the fourth fastest growing airport in the United States. And we've taken our nonstop destinations from 7 that we had in 2015 and 2016 and increased to about 18 today, or not about, actually 18 today. So major growth in nonstop destinations, really connecting our community to the world and really filling out the map. You know, you can essentially go anywhere in the world from Appleton Airport, and certainly that statement is true when you think about some of the large connecting hubs that we serve to. To highlight the Northwest Business Park project, so you can see this yellow highlight up here in the upper corner where that's taking place. We received an Economic Development Administration grant to construct a roadway up in this area. It's taking Endeavor Drive south and then off to the west, and it'll open up connections to State Trunk Highway 76. What we think that'll do for Appleton Airport is open up another 100 acres of growth for growth and development in this area so that we can attract large hangars. Those large hangars bring in a skilled workforce in the aerospace and aviation industry that are great family supporting jobs, skilled jobs that we think about growing and supporting our community. The next slide, I want to just highlight our Appleton Flight Center. That is our fixed-based operator. That is where private and corporate aircraft land and come in. So everybody has seen our commercial terminal. This is our private and corporate terminal. At the airport, we took this over with our own employees in the middle of 2021. It was Platinum Flight Center. We renamed it to Appleton Flight Center. We've seen some significant growth out of this building in regards to the amount of aircraft we serve, the number of fuel gallons are pumped in the last 10 years. All of those operations and fuel gallons pumped have doubled as well as our commercial service. So really great growth numbers here. We just entered or added a brand new hangar, 26,000 square foot hangar this past year. It's able to store about 10 large aircraft inside of it. Plus it also helps for transient aircraft. So with all the manufacturers that we have in the community, we often see large corporate jets landing at Appleton Airport to do business, to have meetings with those organizations. And if those aircraft have to spend the night, especially in the winter, they like to be parked inside and protected from some of the elements. And now we have space to allow them. Also a great benefit for our general aviation areas, we get to host a lot of aircraft during EAA. This past year, we saw 600 additional aircraft parked on Appleton Airport throughout the week. It's great to see all of the jets and single engine aircraft come to Appleton. We certainly think it's a great opportunity for us to continue to support the broader region of Northeast Wisconsin. One of the biggest projects that we're going through today is our concourse expansion, which we've kind of funly dubbed the Elevate project, as we elevate the customer experience throughout the terminal building with this concourse expansion. Here's a rendering of what that'll look like. This is west looking back to the east, and this large portion is what the addition will be. It'll take us up to 10 gates, so we can serve 10 aircraft at one time. This rendering has a few more aircraft pushed around it, but you know how artists are. They like to maybe expand or extrapolate a little bit for fun. But then this is just a general overview, with the yellow being our existing concourse. The green is the concourse expansion. You can see the additional passenger boarding bridges in blue. And then once we're done with that project, some of the gates will come online in April, and then we expect the final completion December of 2025. We'll start to look at how do we revamp our ticketing and baggage makeup, shown here in orange. How do we revamp our baggage claim, shown in red. And then we're also looking at how do we expand our drive lanes in the front of the terminal to accommodate the additional vehicular traffic. That we'll start to work on next summer.
You have a minute left.
All right. So master plan, we're currently working on what the airport will look like in the next 10, 15-year timeframe. So we go through a lot of planning, what those expansion and impacts of our planning will do to not only the airport, but the community as a whole. And then I'll finish up with community engagement. We are proud to host this year. It was number 72 of honor flight missions through Appleton Airport. That's been going on since 2009. Our big event to raise money for the honor flight is a Pulling for Honor, where you can try to pull a large airplane with some of your friends. We raised over $150,000 this year. Wings for Autism is an event that allows individuals with autism to practice through the airport and board an airplane and deplane a plane. So it gives them an airport experience so that they can fly in a normal setting. We have our ice cream bus that goes around and visits 50 to 60 events every year to spread the word about Appleton Airport. And then finally, we do support about 2 Make-A-Wish events per month through our airport and sending individuals on their dream flight. And that is what I have for you all.
Thank you very much, Abe. It's great to see what kind of activities are happening at a smaller local airport. It's one that I fly out of pretty regularly. So our next speaker will be Robert Bryson. He's going to talk to us about transit. So thank you, Robert. Welcome to our program.
Okay, thank you. And let's start to...
We see, there you go, perfect.
Excellent, too. Thank you. And thanks for the League of Women Voters for doing this for us. This is fantastic to be a part of this, too. Just wanted to say that I am the principal author of the chapter of the report card in transit, and we had a nice team that helped out with that too and made a very good chapter in the report card. And hope you get a chance to take a look at it. A little about me: I was the former chairman of ASCE's National Transportation Policy Committee, and currently on the Engineering Practice Policy Committee for ASCE. And I've also been very active in the Transportation and Development Institute, and just finished my 3rd term of office as the chairman of the TNDI's Roadway Council too. So I enjoyed doing this kind of stuff too, and it has helped learn a lot about transit and the other forms of transportation. Okay, for the Wisconsin public transit system and the chapter on transit that we did, transit in Wisconsin actually takes a lot of different forms, and people are really familiar with the bus transit, the fixed route service, and the interstate, intercity, and all that too. But a lot of people don't realize that the shared ride taxi service and the demand responsive service for elderly and handicap is a critical component of transit in Wisconsin. And if you look at the map, there are 45 different rural shared ride taxi service that comprise the transit system in Wisconsin. So, that is a key, a key element of the state too, that is important to, keeping transportation in this state relatively strong. The actual report card, there's 2 other components too. We didn't get into school buses And also ferry service is another aspect of transit in Wisconsin that is really interesting to read about too. So with that, the next thing too, just a comparison of the transit report card grades. In 2024, the grade that was given transit was a D plus. And it was no change from the 2020 grade that was assigned to transit. Just so you know that the IIJA, we were expecting a huge improvement in the overall condition of the transit system. And a lot of different places did take advantage of it. However, the benefits that were gained in the actual condition that's reported in the report card, unfortunately, during that time period, we also had something that was called the COVID pandemic, which had a tremendous impact on transit operation funding and different types of things too. So I'm going to get into each of these categories a little bit to tell you what affected the actual grade. The first thing is the overall capacity of the transit system. One key thing to note is that the overall service area for transit continues to decrease. In 2016, it covered roughly 56% of people in the state, and it now decreased a little bit from the 2020 report card to now 53% of the population is served. Ridership has dropped, pretty significantly due to the COVID pandemic, and you can see the ridership figures in the table there too. They show 2019 to 2023 over there, and it shows that transit ridership in Wisconsin is being slow to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has a lot of impacts on the different aspects of transit service. The one thing that is of interest is that Amtrak, while it did dip during the COVID pandemic, it's coming back. The ridership on that is coming back a lot faster than the transit bus service that is in there too. And if you saw in the news just recently, the Amtrak instituted the new Borealis service, which provides an additional route between Milwaukee and the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And they just hit their 100,000th rider since this summer too. So that is a growing part of transit service, passenger service in the area. One of the things that is a sort of a carryover from the last report card is providing cross-jurisdictional service too. And I'll get into that in a little bit of detail later on when we go through this. Oops. Okay, another one of the key indicators is, as I mentioned, there was a large infusion of funds that came from the IIJA. And the different transit agencies in Wisconsin have taken a really good advantage of those funds that were made available. And as you can see from the drawing over there, there has been a significant increase in federal funds that came through over there. I'm sorry about that. What you can see from the reports from the transit service areas too, there have been a lot of funds made available, and people have taken good advantage in upgrading bus fleets. And the number of buses which exceed their useful life has decreased to only 9.3% of the entire fleet in Wisconsin. And that's a huge reduction from the 23% in 2020. Not only that, but there are improvements that are being done in besides rolling stock in their transit facilities, support vehicles, and other areas too, which were particularly important different aspects of the IIJA. the maintenance and operating and storage facilities, as I noted down there too, the information was not updated since the data that was available for the 2020 report card. But again, agencies are taking advantage of the funding available in IIJA to improve maintenance facilities in different operating and storage facilities, and would expect some improvement to be seen in that when we get into the next report card 4 years from now. Operation and maintenance. As I mentioned, there was a large increase in the funding for, from federal funds to support transit from the IIJA. And one of the things that it was particularly noticeable too was the overall effect on the operation and maintenance performance too. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the next slide here too. Now I'm going to go back. Okay, this again is related to the bus service during COVID. And because of the declines that were being seen in overall passengers and the actual operating of the transit systems, passenger ridership went way down, and that affected the ability for transit agencies to be able to provide funds for operating the transit services too. So they had two large infusions of funds to support transit operation, and that helped keep transit operating very well through the transit system. Living here in Milwaukee, you could see the performance over there. During the time of COVID, they did maintain the bus services too, but the transit systems had to limit the number of passengers that were able to board the buses too. And oftentimes the larger buses had a capacity of 15 passengers. So that did affect the availability of fare box revenues to support the overall operation of transit system. With the slow recovery of transit ridership, it again affects the availability of local agencies support their transit operations, through the fare box and also local revenue. So that is going to be an issue to be looking at in the future too, as hopefully as transit ridership will recover from the lows that were experienced in the COVID pandemic. One other option that I mentioned earlier too was the challenges to operate multi-jurisdictional services. And one of the ways that this can be improved upon is through regional transit authorities. However, back in 2011, the Wisconsin legislature eliminated the ability for local agencies to and local areas to fund regional transit or regional transportation associations too. So it eliminated some that were in existence, and now it's precluding the creation of new ones, which could help support and move transit forward through multi-jurisdictional and make it better to provide connectivity between different local areas. What I'm going to do is the information on that can probably be best explained by looking at this graphic on the funding of operating costs. And there are four basic elements to, how agencies fund their operational costs. There is a allocation of funding provided through, the Federal Transit Administration. The state of Wisconsin provides a subsidy to local agencies to operate that too. But one of the major sources of revenue is fare box revenues that are created from, the passengers, paying their transit fees. And also, a lot of the improvements in the operating costs need to be provided through local funding. And that's primarily related to a property tax revenue. The state funding has been relatively flat since the early 2020 teens, when it was reduced by 10% from at that time, and it's remained pretty much constant through that period. And that's shown in the red line in that. It was affected a lot during the COVID pandemic. There was a large infusion of the operating funds that I mentioned, through federal programs. And at the same time, because the local agencies could use the monies that were provided in the Assistant Act to the state funding was reduced. Also, because of the large drop in fare box revenues that you can see there too, a lot of the local agencies had to provide a pretty substantial increase in local funding, which was a challenge too. The I don't have the data for 2023, so it's not shown there too. But the state funding is going to be back to normal too, and we're still experiencing some benefits from the IIJA in transit service and operation. Local funding remains an issue because limitations that are put on the tax revenues and the local tax levy. And hopefully some progress can be made in doing that to better support transit and avoid having to make the tough decisions on where local funds need to go, whether it's through transit or other programs that the city or the county or the
You're
agency
you're
has
at
to
your
do.
2-minute mark.
Okay. Key indicators of future transit need is going to be transit reauthorization in 2026. And there has to be a decision made on, if they're going to continue to provide support the way that the IIJA is, or go back to old times. Support of capital and operating costs is going to be an issue that's going to have to be contended with back in the when it's reauthorized in 2026. So future transit system needs also, we're looking for the ability to create regional transit authorities, and intercity rail service is looking at expanding as well. Public safety indicators, just this provides some summary of crashes involving transit vehicles in there too. And while it shows that it's increasing, it looks like a large number of crashes involving transit vehicles. It should be noted that it's only like 0.5% of all crashes in the state involve transit vehicles. And as far as fatalities go, the total during the time period of this report card, there were 8 fatalities, and as compared to the 550 to 600 statewide. Resilience and innovation too is not that much of a challenge in Wisconsin. We'd have an excellent way to deal with snow removal, and that while transit service may be affected by that, it's usually back up and running, and our agencies perform real well in maintaining operation during inclement weather. Also getting into investments in no or low emission vehicles, it's just going to be great. And as far as technology goes, real-time traveler information, automated pavement systems, and the implementation of vehicle to traffic control and vehicle to vehicle communications are helping to make transit operation more effective in Wisconsin. So
Right.
recommendations to to raise the grade when we do the report card 4 years from now. The 2026 federal reauthorization of the surface transportation is going to be critical. And in order to maintain transit service, they have to look at not only providing improvements in support of capital improvements in transit systems, but also they're going to have to look at you look at funding, different types of operating cost support too, so.
It looks like we have a limited time, Robert, so
Okay, I'm gonna go to these that's probably the most critical one that in there too, and hopefully repeal the ban of regional transit authorities and investigate again the limitations placed on locals for funding. So that's it. That's my presentation, and sorry for running over a little bit. So
thank you very much. It is exciting to learn more about transit and try to work through the problems that we face. Our next speaker is Dave Steele. We welcome Dave, and he will introduce himself to you a little bit. Thanks, Dave. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you for inviting me to speak about MobiliSE. It's a great honor. When I got the invitation from the League of Women Voters, I jumped at the chance, because transit matters. I really appreciate you putting a spotlight on public transit in our state. My name is Dave Steele. I'm the executive director of MobiliSE. I'm a transit rider myself. Been riding Milwaukee County Transit for 30 years. Spent some time riding the Madison Metro when I was a student there back in the day. Why do I ride transit? I enjoy it. Connects me to my community, helps me stay physically fit because I get a lot of walking in. And I support it because it keeps my air clean, helps clean the air in my city, helps connect people to the opportunities that they need to get to. But we have tremendous challenges across our state and funding and growing transit. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our organization as an advocacy group and what we're looking to do. So we are based in Milwaukee. MobiliSE, the SE is spelled that way because that stands for southeastern Wisconsin. And in with the lack of regional transit authorities, as Robert had mentioned, in Wisconsin, because we've eliminated things like regional transit authorities, that means that nonprofits and groups like ours, there's a void that needs to be filled. How we can coordinate and kind of bring different regional players together. So MobiliSE, like I said here, we're a nonprofit organization. We have a board made up of regional and civic leaders. We convene regional leaders. And out of those conversations have not just come the advocacy work, but an actual transportation program that we oversee called FlexRide Milwaukee, which is similar to the rural taxis that Robert referred to, but in a more urban area and a little bit more technology forward with the on-demand component like Uber or Lyft, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So we are an advocacy group. We have our advocacy agenda approved by the board. Our goal is to build a nonpartisan and regional base of support really based on southeastern Wisconsin. So I'm really happy that we have both parties represented in our leadership. We've got great buy-in from different political leaders, and especially in today's day and age, with how we know everything is so crazy divided. I mean, we do have a broad base of support here regionally for what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, and looking to build upon that for the future. And really, our message as advocates is just to continue to press that message of why transit is important. Just what I opened with, why do I ride it? We need to make sure that we get that message to our decision makers at all levels of government, that transit matters and it needs to be supported. So, in talking about infrastructure, and I really appreciated the conversation about the report card. When you're talking about public transit, especially in Wisconsin, yes, it is partly hard infrastructure, things like buses and rails. But it's really more about the people. It's the operators. It's the operating expense. Back when I started taking the bus in Milwaukee when I was a kid, that was kind of the peak of transit funding in Milwaukee County at that time. And we had buses that came right in front of my house every 15 minutes. I hardly even had to look at the paper schedule. I just crossed the street from my house and pick up the Route 19. I was off to school, off to college, and everywhere all over the city. That doesn't really exist anymore. I have a bus rapid transit route on my street that comes every 10 minutes, which is a great improvement. But huge swaths of the city are very underserved now. And what that means for us, I was talking with a friend of mine whose son has a job at, scooping custard at Cops, very Milwaukee thing. And he says, I wish my son could take the bus to his job at Cops, but it doesn't work. It takes an hour. And I'm like, well, that's why we need more buses, more people driving those buses so that we have greater frequencies. And then that long journey could be much shorter. And our advocacy agenda here is really that goal. For us, it's dedicated funding for transit. I think that the regional transit authority conversation is highly necessary. But on the other hand, we do see some of our neighboring states and competing states that have regional transit authorities that have no money. The Kansas City metro area has a regional transit authority, but it's gone broke and it's falling apart. So from my perspective, we're going to spend our limited political capital here on finding that dedicated funding. And in Milwaukee, it's at a near crisis level. And that transit system that I grew up really relying on might not exist in its, the same way. And that requires money.
Dave, you have 2 minutes left.
Thank you. So we are a voice for transit. We have, bring our regional leaders together around our advocacy agenda. Like I said here, safe streets for all users. I want to use the balance of my time to talk about really briefly FlexRide Milwaukee, which is a on-demand transportation program that we launched here and currently oversee here in Milwaukee. When we launched this in March of 2022 as an innovative on-demand workforce transportation solution, we had very few riders, but 2 years later, we actually just crossed our 100,000 ride mark. So I think our service is not the end all be all, but plays an important role in the future of transit in Milwaukee because we're helping people get to the places that are currently not served by transit. So if you're familiar with the kind of layout and geography of Milwaukee, you know that we have suburban areas where there's no bus service, very spread out. We have urban areas where there's bus service and it's very compact and dense. So we'll take you from some of the densest parts of the city out to the lower density suburbs for $3. And it functions a lot like an Uber, where you call it up on your phone. It's an app just like an Uber, but these are shared rides that you'll share with other folks and get you out there. And, we're really encouraged by the growth of this service. And we've partnered quite a bit with Milwaukee County Transit on it, Waukesha County and many partners. And, if you need any or looking for any more information about that, just check out our website or check out flexridemke.com. And also happy to talk about anything in the Q&A. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. That's an exciting program to see happening in Milwaukee. So thank you. Our next speaker will be Ian Ritz, and Ian will introduce himself. Don't forget to put your questions in the chat. Thank you very much. Ian, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity to be part of the presentation today. I appreciate that. I did this a few years ago and I thought it was a great experience, and so I was very grateful for the opportunity to come back. I have a few things that I'm going to touch on. Some of it, Bob covered very well in his presentation, but I have a few other things to provide as well. So just in terms of summary for what we look like with transit in Wisconsin, it is broad and is diverse. We have nearly 80 public transit systems across the state. We have over 130 specialized transit systems serving seniors and individuals with disabilities. We have some form of specialized transit in all 72 counties, 11 tribal nations, 12 employment transportation entities, and 8 intercity bus routes. And it takes the shape of fixed route, paratransit, route deviation, shared ride taxi, and streetcar in terms of operating modes. And when you combine state and federal dollars, it's over $245 million annually coming into the state to support transit services. And this is the map. This is the same map that Bob put up, so I will move through it very quickly. But as you can see, we do have representation north, south, east, west across the state. So it's quite broad across Wisconsin. And this is just to continue on some of the information that was provided in terms of ridership. Just a little bit different graphic format, but we saw a very significant decrease to transit ridership in 2020 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was a huge hit in that first quarter of 2020. From then, we've seen kind of gradual recovery. This particular map shows data for our shared ride taxi systems. So those are the demand response systems, tend to be more rural areas and smaller communities. So, as of we have some kind of estimated numbers for 2024, we're right about 80%, 79, 80% of where we were pre-pandemic. The numbers look fairly similar overall. If you take a look at statewide bus transit ridership, so this is the bus systems. Again, huge decrease in the spring of 2020, and then a gradual recovery. This one is about 81% through halfway through 2024 compared to 2020. And in talking with peer states, our numbers in Wisconsin are fairly similar to those around us. And so, yes, it has been kind of a slow, gradual recovery, but, we're not necessarily dissimilar from other peers in our area. And again, some of the challenges, COVID itself was a huge challenge, led to a significant reduction in ridership. Ridership means reduction in passenger revenue as well. So that led to some financial challenges. It was backfilled with, several COVID relief bills, the CARES Act and ARPA, things like that. But along the same time period, there's been some other factors that have created challenges for transit systems across the state. Inflation, as we've all seen for groceries and everyday living expenses was no different for transit. There's been significant cost increases, labor, parts, insurance, et cetera. I've seen significant increases across various sectors. There's also been very significant supply chain challenges. So the ability, again, Bob was mentioning about influx of additional federal dollars for the Infrastructure Investment Act. However, some of the ability to actually get vehicles delivered and replace things has been limited because of just supply chain challenges. Where normally would take 6 or 8 months to get an accessible minivan or accessible minibus, maybe it's 2 years. Heavy bus manufacturing as well has seen significant challenges as cost increases. Their ability to just kind of move products through has been limited. So delays, significant time delays on getting a new bus. So where there's dollars maybe available to purchase some things, just getting them built and delivered on site and in service has been a lot longer than it used to be. So that certainly has been a challenge across the state. In addition, there's been labor challenges. So we were seeing it a bit pre-pandemic, just being able to hire and retain drivers, but it was exacerbated with the pandemic, particularly in smaller communities where they often were retirees who would come back in the labor force and drive or do volunteer driving. They've gone away from the pandemic and they kind of stayed away. So there's been a general labor shortage in the transit world. This is also played out in school bus, as may have been experienced in your community. Certainly in Madison, last year there's significant challenges with MMSD being able to operate school buses. So this is an ongoing challenge within this sector. Touching on budgets, we're currently in our 2023-2025 state biennium budget. We signed in July of 2023. There was actually some modest increases to some of our state aid programs. Our main public transit operating assistance program is that urban mass transit aid program. The 8520 program increased about 2%. However, that program did shift out of the transportation fund and into the general fund. And we have smaller programs. Our paratransit aid program increased by 4%, and our specialized transit aid program increased by 11.6%. So there were some modest increases to some state aid programs.
Ian, you have about 1.5 minutes left.
Thank you. So what we do at WISTAT on an ongoing basis, a lot of what we do is monitoring service levels, obviously a lot of funding support and technical assistance. We collect a lot of data. We analyze and report a lot of data. And then we just engage with our stakeholders across the state, cities, counties, nonprofit organizations. We do our best to answer questions, provide support in the, some specific things. We have some statewide vehicle contracts, things like that, to try to help support services across the state. And, one thing in particular that has been a little bit challenging that we had to navigate, and I think we've successfully done that, is census 2022 census had some changes to urbanized area boundaries, a few places outside the Milwaukee area, in particular, Washington, Ozaukee County, West Bend, Hartford, but then also in the Madison area and Stoughton. We had to work very closely with those communities to make sure that they understood, the impacts that was going to happen to them from a state and federal perspective. But we've successfully helped them transition due to some census changes. So with that, concludes my presentation. I look forward to questions at the very end. Thank you.
Well, Ian, thank you very much. It looks like the DOT has some work cut out for it to help support transit, and League of Women Voters is always happy to help with that kind of work that needs to be done. So now we're going to turn over to Anastasia, and she will help us with our questions that have been put into the chat, and she will guide them to the people who will best answer them. And then we'll have an opportunity here for about 20 minutes to have questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to get all of our speakers up on the screen for everyone
Yes.
so that we can see them while they're all answering your questions. While I'm doing that, feel free to keep entering questions into the chat. While I'm doing that, Ryan, I'm going to start with you.
All right.
What do you see as the biggest struggle for Wisconsin airports moving forward?
I think it's a common theme across almost all of these. It's going to be a combination of funding and staffing. One is, we can find the funds through different grants, through the bill funding to help out with that. But as we saw, the result of that, the increased costs to do things was triggered by a lot of a labor shortage. It took a lot more manpower to get things done, and that ended up costing more in the process. So finding the people and the funds to accomplish these projects is really where we need to see an increase right now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sticking sort of with that theme in regards to airports, and Ryan or Abe, you can both answer this, or one of you. At airports, what percentage of income is from tickets, leasing of space for aviation related activities, training facilities, etc.?
I can jump in on that if you want me to, Ryan.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I can tell you about Appleton Airport, and it's probably different at every other airport. The common expression is, if you see one airport, you've seen one airport. The large majority of our revenue comes from commercial air service, and that's leasing space inside the terminal and its landing fees. It's best to look at an airport almost like you would a mall or a business park. We generate our revenue. We're self-funded. We have been self-funded since 1990, so we don't take any tax dollars off the local levy. And we generate revenue through leasing land, leasing space inside the terminal building, and then on our FBO selling fuel and renting out hangar space. And so I'd say the largest portion is commercial service activity around the airlines is about 50%. And then it trickles down from there, leasing land to large hangar tenants that we have on site. And then the FBO is probably 20 to 25%.
Great, awesome, thank you. So you said that if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. That makes me curious. Ryan, you had talked about the resiliency issues in Wisconsin's airports. Would that hold true for the resiliency issues as well, or do many of Wisconsin's airports share similar resiliency threats?
It goes across the state. There are some airports that are more susceptible than others. But in general, with the increased rain events that we are having, the weather in general, we need to be more prepared. Design standards needs to be updated, and implementing those new design standards takes time and money to accomplish. And in a lot of cases, it's drastically different than what was out there before. And renovating existing situations is more costly. And then on top of that, there's different threats in the world than we've had in the past, and making sure that our airports are able to handle those situations. Disaster readiness programs and things like that are things that need to continue to be integrated and upgraded as issues come up.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Abe, we had a question in the chat. What type of training does ATW do, and what kind of safety issues has ATW had?
And so in regards to the training, there's really two primary regulations that we follow. As you can imagine, aviation's pretty well regulated. We follow the FAA regulations, and then there's also a separate set for TSA in regards to security. And so because of the regulation, a lot of times the training is pretty spelled out and what we have to do in regards to snow removal, wildlife, emergency operations, general operations, snow removal operations. And so we follow those guidelines pretty by the book in regards to training for those areas. And then very similar comments in regards to security and the TSA 1542 regulation that we fall under there. Sometimes because of the small size, we do buy training programs and modules off of industry experts and then use that at Appleton. That seems to help us, so that we know that we're getting the best training out there. And then as far as safety issues, we try to have none. I guess the safety aspect here, we're always shooting for zero, but there are items or times when you do have an aircraft that has landed here in distress. Luckily, we've haven't had any fatalities in the time I've been here, and that's been over 20 years. So, so far, so good. And knocking on all of the wood and rubbing the rabbit's feet and all that stuff for good luck into the future.
Absolutely, we will do that with you. There was another question in chat asking who or what is behind Appleton Airport's growth?
I think we have an incredibly passionate team of individuals here at the airport that really go above and beyond every single day to help support this community and push innovative initiatives forward, really focusing on customer experience and then how we can help our partners grow and develop their product here that in turn supports our community and supports our airport. So I would say it's a team-based approach. Plus we have what I feel is a very strong regional economy that's growing and developing. So we get to take advantage of that oftentimes.
Perfect, thank you. Everybody can continue putting airport questions in the chat. I'm going to do one more before we pivot to the transit end. And this is open to Ryan or Abe. What would you consider to be one of the biggest wins in aviation infrastructure since the last report card was released?
I guess the bill funding was probably one of the biggest wins. It allowed, it was a big influx of money over the last 3 years. And that alone has really helped maintain where we are at. I think without that, there would be a struggle to say we were still going to be a C+. We may have actually had to drop back on that one. Abe, do you have?
No, I would 100% agree with you, Ryan. I think not only in the state of Wisconsin, but nationwide, our airports, because of our aviation industry really started to really grow and develop after World War II. A lot of our infrastructure is aging and old compared to what you see in Europe and what you see in Asia. And so that BIL money, whether it was the airport investment or the airport terminal program, really allowed airports to take on projects that have been sitting there for 10, 15, 20 years. And it's helping us catch up. I would say we still got a long ways to go, but it's certainly helping us make some ground.
Thank you both. Turning to transit for a bit for a few questions. Bob, we had a question in the chat. How do we integrate local transit service and potential expansion of rail or rapid bus service between cities and also intra-cities?
All right, I know what goes on in Milwaukee too, and there's connectivity being developed between the different modes of transportation, and getting to and from transit as well as making connections to other modes of transportation. In Milwaukee here, we have the Downtown Transit Center, and it provides a marriage and connections between local transit services, uh, the Amtrak system to intercity buses, and different types of forms that all converge in there, and they make it very simple to make connections to other forms of transit, and it helps in the ability to get around too, just by the connections that are there too. So that is, it's providing an opportunity to do it. As far as expanding train service and rapid bus service between cities too, there are a couple of grants that were provided to look at improving the overall availability of transit in the state. Additional service provided from in the Kenosha to Milwaukee area too. Interestingly enough, too, is that Amtrak currently provides connector or a bus service in the lines from Milwaukee North to Green Bay, and they're looking at the opportunities to actually provide a rail connection there too. And an additional area that's being looked at is the Milwaukee to Madison corridor too. So, there are opportunities to expand that and, again, provide the connectivity between cities over there too. So, we can just hope that there is support for funding these rail improvements too, not only through the federal government in the different transportation and transit funding programs that are available too, but also there needs to be support from the state in getting these funds and appropriating them for that purpose.
Yeah, if I could just jump on, I think, in terms of getting that support, there's been great support for the Milwaukee-Chicago connection. I mean, the Hiawatha connection, the Hiawatha route between Milwaukee and Chicago is the busiest intercity rail corridor in the United States outside of the East Coast. And we just received a large federal grant from Tammy Baldwin to add more trips to that. And that's been hugely supported by the business community in Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin, even under Scott Walker's administration. The challenge is making that case for the rest of the state. I think Borealis is a huge step forward because it's been so successful. And I think when it comes to connectivity within cities, to me, as an advocate, that should be the easy stuff. Because a lot of times it's communication that these options even exist. So a great example, I took the Borealis out to La Crosse to go to a conference and had no clue about how to get to downtown La Crosse from the train station. But because I'm a transit nerd, I figured it out. Downloaded the La Crosse Metro app on my phone, paid for the ride, walked a block from the train station, and there was an easy bus ride right to downtown La Crosse. No one at the train station at Amtrak had any clue what I was talking about. I said, "Hey, how do I get to the bus stop?" Like, and to me, that's just a communication piece. So I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that don't cost a lot of money. When I get off the plane at Milwaukee Airport, I should have so many signs directing me to the fact that there's a bus route that takes me to downtown Milwaukee in 20 minutes. It should be as obvious as day, but it's not, and so it's things like that for decision makers, I just think we can press for some of the easy, quote unquote, easy solutions that don't cost quite as much money, but could boost the ridership, some of that stuff.
Awesome, thank you. In that same sort of vein, we had a question about whether or not there are apps that travelers in both air and ground transit can use to find the proximity of those options nearby them. Is there like one app that can find all of your options near you, or would you need to download the La Crosse app and the Milwaukee app separately?
Yep, that app does exist in my dreams. I don't know why we have such challenge trying to do that. I travel quite a bit, and I have a ritual when my plane lands and I'm on the tarmac. I download the local transit app, I download the local bike share app, and then I go. Imagine a world where it was as easy to use transit as it is to rent a car from your airport, right? Seamless, but we're not there. I think in the interim, what we have are really powerful tools. La Crosse, not a huge transit system compared to Milwaukee or Madison or other places, but they have an app where you can track where your bus is in real time. So when I got off that train in La Crosse, I could wait 10 minutes in the train station in comfort rather than stand and wait for the bus because I knew exactly where that bus was at. So yeah, I completely agree. I mean, one app where I don't have to like mess around with a bunch of stuff would be great. And I wish somebody could tell me why we just cannot seem to get that, because every transit agency these days has it seems like has pretty solid apps compared to in the past.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I do just want to point out that Jen in the chat did mention that Google Maps has a transit option. So that's a good sort of like triager for your options where you can then go to the different apps of the various options. Thank you. It was mentioned interacting with our elected officials for funding and policy. Is there an opportunity in the next legislative session to bring back the regional transit authority opportunities, or to reintroduce the indexing to inflation for the gas tax?
Robert, I've got a few thoughts about that, but I'm interested in your thoughts on the RTA.
No, I wish there was to it. It's like your
Yeah.
Desire and dream of having the app there too. It's something that's been supported and being advanced by not only the local agencies but regional transit authorities too, that I know that are trying to get this implemented too. And there's so much opportunity that's there too, but you have to get the ear of the state legislature in order to
Yep.
do that too. And
Yep.
and based on past action in terms of funding and supporting transit too, I don't know if the support is actually there to do something like that. A lot of it was created, back in, I think it was 2011, is in association with Act 10, when they eliminated those options for the regional transit agencies too. So there were a number of RTAs that were in existence at the time, and they were basically eliminated by the legislature at the time, probably as a way to address taxes and and other class 2 locals when the RTAs had the ability to generate the funds. So,
Yeah.
getting over that and getting that into the hands of the legislature is going to be a challenge.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And Ian too, if you've got to deal with that on a regular basis to provide funds to to complete that, and I really appreciate everything that you did too, but it's got to be difficult to try to overcome those types of challenges.
Yeah, I would say, historically, RTA, the last 13, 14 years has been a really challenging topic to advance. It's politically sensitive, and so far, I mean, there are lots of communities out there who, at least that I work with from the transit side, who would very much advocate for it. But the legislative landscape has been challenging and probably will continue to be challenging in the near future, though there is, an unknown how, obviously we have new maps and legislative districts, and, there's going to be a little bit of shuffling in the makeup of the legislature, but, whether that opens the door for RTAs, difficult to say. I have no particular insight beyond anybody else on that, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's just overall, the RTA, I would just kind of harken back to what I said earlier. I don't think that it's the silver bullet that would cost so much time and political energy to achieve. But if it doesn't have any money going into it, why did we do it? So I think money should come first. I'm watching very closely what's happening right now in Nashville Nashville is a city about the same size as Milwaukee. It's growing rapidly. We're not. But they have been decidedly anti-transit down there for quite some time. They have a new mayor that's trying another transit referendum. And this time they're not making it about light rail and big mega projects. They're making it about the more buses, fixing the sidewalks. They're basically asking the citizens of Nashville, hey, do you want to have a sidewalk in front of your street that's intact? Do you want to have good bus service coming every 15 minutes, 10 minutes? So that'll be next week, and I'm watching that one really, really closely because that's a red city in a red state. Obviously with huge traffic issues that we don't have in Milwaukee, but could be a lesson for us. It's never easy, but I think it has to start with a clear ask of why do we want this money and why do we want a regional transit authority? You know, the Milwaukee Brewers went to the state legislature with an ask, hey, do you want Major League Baseball? Then, you know, pay $500 million for a stadium. Now I'm a Brewers fan, so, you know, I guess I support that, but if we need an ask, why are we doing this? And that's where I think being very clear, it's about connectivity with better bus routes. It's about rapid buses. It's about things like FlexRide sort of sprinkled in there to cover the gaps. Up until now, it's been all about super expensive high-speed trains. That's how that's how it's been framed politically. But I think if we reframe it and talk about it more broadly, and make it more statewide, it can't just be Milwaukee and Madison saying we need this. It's got to be La Crosse, Wausau, Green Bay. You know, in our organization, we're based in Southeast Wisconsin, but we're having those conversations statewide through groups like TDA Wisconsin to try to have more of a statewide approach to it.
Thank you all. Pivoting to sort of a different subject, are there any ongoing feasibility studies or advanced plans for transitioning transit systems to moving away from fossil fuels? What are the prospects currently there?
Okay, and doing our research, the prospects are excellent too. And there's funding that's available for the bus fleets to transition to the electric vehicles and lower emission vehicles too. And the operating agencies are taking advantage of that too. So there's going to be a lot of movement in that area too, as those buses enter the fleets. And you know, it's excellent too. And I think that's going to be you know, reflected in the next report card in 2034 as these different agencies take advantage of the opportunities to do just that. So, you know, I'm looking forward to, you know, some, you know, great news to report next time when we do it on the integration of non-fossil fuel buses and low emission buses into the fleets.
Yeah, when it comes to electric buses, I think it's a major lift in Milwaukee. I mean, our system has 400 buses in the fleet. I know Racine has done great work in shifting to EV buses and solar panels, but you know, with such a smaller number, it's a lot easier to pull off. And I guess as an advocate and a rider, I think we should always prioritize frequency of service. So I would rather have diesel buses that come every 10 minutes than an electric bus that comes every half an hour because we spent the money on the electric bus. So I wish we could have both. And in a perfect world, I think we would, and I think we will as the Infrastructure Act kind of comes into play here. But yeah, it's you know, the bus rapid transit system in Milwaukee, which I ride every day, are electric buses. I love it. It makes my street a lot quieter. It's a comfortable ride, so we need to do it.
Well, it's time for us all to say thank you to everybody. We truly appreciate all the work that each of our speakers is doing and the effort that you've put into helping us understand the report card for transit and aviation. So thank you so very much for all of your hard work. We truly appreciate what you've been doing for us. So thank you. Yay. And we have more webinars coming up. We will be doing this continued webinar process. We have a series that you can check out all the calendar and the schedule that is on the website for the American Society of Civil Engineers or on the League's website. And our next webinar will be on November 14th at 12 o'clock, and that will be about inland waterways and ports, which are also very, very important in Wisconsin and kind of an overlooked infrastructure issue, because you only have a few ports in Wisconsin, but they're very active and very busy. As a transit user myself, I truly appreciate all the work that you guys have done on transit. When I was in elected office, I was the author of RTA bill for the Fox cities, and I sure would like to see the RTA bills come back again. So thank you for your hard work, right? And Anastasia or Deb Cromwell or Carol, please add anything that you'd like to add.
Really quickly, in our last 2 minutes, if our speakers wanted to give their #1 pitch for infrastructure in Wisconsin, or the #1 message that you want us, people who are interested in infrastructure, to send to elected officials, we would love to hear that.
I think the big thing is with elected officials is to get out there and vote. And once they voted, let them know what you feel. They like hearing about it. So write your legislators, write your local representatives, and let them know what you want, what's important to you.
I'll jump in and say, I think Ryan hit the nail on the head when he said aviation could use some additional funding. I think there are some tremendous opportunities for the world of aviation within our state and ability to grow and develop. Just need a few more dollars.
As far as transit goes too, there is a 2026 is going to be a critical year in doing a new surface transportation program, and support has to be generated through that. And both for the Wisconsin legislature as well as the federal, we have to really get into trying to do some balance between operating costs and making providing effective ways to keep those services operating. So capital hopefully will be addressed, and then the operating cost is going to be a huge challenge based on what is going on with transit ridership and a reduction of overall fare revenues too. So that deficit is going to have to be addressed.
Yeah, I would say to a legislator, especially a new one. I mean, we're going to have a lot of new legislators in Madison. I would frame it as really all about choice. The more choices, the better it is for people. We have a lot of choice in our housing stock. I can live in a studio apartment, or I can live in a larger single family home, and different places, different stages of my life, I have different choices. We should have the same type of choice in transportation. If my only choice to get a job is to have my own car with insurance and gas and maintenance and all of that, that limits my opportunities. So we need more choices in transportation. And, that's why we need to, just continue to fund things like transit and have safer biking and walking on our streets.
Yeah, so I would say transit looks different in different places. It's an urban, suburban, and rural service, and it provides all kinds of benefits to all kinds of individuals in the community. It helps seniors and disabled folks live independently. It helps people go to work. It helps students go to school. It helps people enjoy social and other recreational things. So it is multifunctional, and it's everywhere. And it's important to communicate that's benefits to all individuals, all communities, all kinds of services. So that's my message.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Very good wrap up.
Thank
So
you for the
that-
information, these calls to action, and thank you everyone for joining us in these efforts.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Have a great day.